Hey there, guys. So I was asked what would I do in terms of programming for people that are over 40 and 50, like in a powerlifting strongman sense. Now, the reality is there's a few different concepts that you need to wrap your head around before you just try and adjust a program. So the biggest thing is recovery. It's the recovery aspect as you get older just isn't quite the same. But having said that, there's a lot of things that can bring it pretty much up to par, especially with a lot of, people today, like some of the I'm going to say mid to late 20-year-olds, because the reality is there's a lot of people that aren't particularly well to start with. So, if you're in your 40s and 50s and you want to recover better, that's the first step you want to take before heavily adjusting a program. So before you even get stuck into, your heavy powerlifting or strongman block, you need to look at your ability to recover and how you're going to increase that. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you're able to drop your body fat percentage, you're naturally going to have, more testosterone and lower estrogen levels. So straight off the bat, from a hormonal standpoint, you're going to be in a better position to recover and gain, quality muscle mass. Another factor, and a lot of people don't really talk about it much, but in your 40s and 50s, you're nowhere near as active as what you would have been in your late teens to early 20s. So your total cardio capacity and just ability to run, and carry oxygen in the blood, things like that, is generally going to be a lot less. So if you were to incorporate, 10 to 15 minutes of like hard cardio, 3 to 4 times a week, and then bring your VO2 max up, you're going to have a much better time recovering as a whole, because from a systemic point of view, you're going to be holding more total, oxygen in your blood. Therefore, you're going to recover quicker, but you're also going to have a better circulatory system. So you're going to be able to have that oxygen, diffuse into the tissues so you can recover better. So just, bringing your general fitness up and then, reducing body fat levels as well is going to put you in a much, much better position to carry training volume in your general, program. So you won't have to go ultra low volume. You just go more mid-range, simply because, you've optimized your ability to recover. The other big one is a lot of people then tend to neglect sleep. So as long as you're getting that 8 hours of sleep a night, you're just going to be more regulated in general. And again, that just has a huge knock-on effect to being able to recover. Especially, if you're getting that 8 hours sleep and you're sort of going to bed by 10 p.m. and getting up at 6 a.m., getting that quality 8 hours of sleep and being more in sync with like a natural body clock, as opposed to, staying up really late and then waking up early and then trying to have midday sleeps, things like that. You want to try and avoid. So you want to try and get all the aspects related to recovery down point, and that's going to make a huge difference. Now, when it comes to the actual programming side of things, I would favor more 1 to 2, top heavy working sets, and then moving the rest of my program into accessory movements. And you'll ultimately find that that's very similar to how I train anyway, because I've gotten stronger. So, if you're older or if you're just a lot stronger in general, the ability to recover from your training is, I'm not going to say more important than the training itself, but it's not too far behind the truth. So, 1 to 2 top heavy sets works really well. And then, you can move on to your other assistant exercises, because you got to remember at the end of the day, and we'll use squat as an example, in competition, squat is just an expression of strength on the platform. So as long as you've trained that movement pattern well, you can squat well. It then comes down to looking at all the other components that go into a squat and building yourself up that way. That isn't as taxing on your nervous system, because ultimately that's going to take more total time to recover from. So you want to try and limit the amount of heavy compound movements you're doing in a training session. You still need to do them, but you're not going to go and do something like 5 sets of 5. You're going to work up to, 1 or 2 top sets or like a heavy single, and then you're going to do your back off sets for speed and technique work. That way, you keep your movement pattern really, clean and healthy. Then by all means, if you want to go and use the leg press or, leg extensions or leg curls and do 3 sets of 15 to 20 to failure, you're not going to have taxed your body to the same extent as, multiple sets of heavy squats. You're not going to jack your cortisol levels up so high that it takes you, days upon days to recover. So it's looking at it from that standpoint. And like in terms of programs, you could literally just get any, bodybuilding style program, look at the top sets, cut it down to 1 to 2, look at all the accessory exercises, knock a set or 2 off what they're doing, and you're not too far off it, Like, yeah, you are older and, it's going to take you a bit longer to recover. But if you're not pushing yourself as hard on those heavy compound movements, you're going to recover a lot better in general. And then you're going to have more energy left for your assistant exercises. Now, people that are, in their 40s and 50s on TRT, they're going to recover really well. You've just got the testosterone there, you're going to recover. So you might get away with, having more total top sets. I personally would shy away from it. I'd just stick to 1 or 2 heavy top sets and then go and stack up your assistant exercises and just see how you feel. If you're recovering well, then by all means, add another set here or there. Personally, I'd just stick to the accessories and then I'd either try and reduce break times down to a minute or 2, or if you wanted, you could have, 90-second breaks between your accessory movements and then up the total amount of sets that you're doing and getting your volume that way. But it's just, play it by ear and just see how you go. It's really not that complicated when you just look at the other factors that generally will slow you down in life. And that's just simply, as you get older, a lot more people they're not as active, so their VO2 max goes down, therefore recovery goes down. A lot of people let their body fat levels come up quite high, therefore, testosterone levels go down, estrogen levels go up, and you just end up in a negative, position. And again, the more estrogen you have, the more body fat you have, the higher the probability of them being insulin resistant. And then, you come into another problem of, your energy levels keep crashing because, your body can't really utilize the stored energy it has correctly. And, you just burn out in training. So if you look after your total health, the actual training programs and, the programming behind it isn't too difficult. It's more keeping yourself in shape so that you can actually run a training program that works. And as I said, you can just look at any generic program, knock the top sets down to 1 or 2, and in the accessories sort of keep it about 70% of what they had. And you've got a pretty close starting point to where you need to be. And again, the fitter you are, the more energy you're going to have. And you'll see, there's some people that pick up running and, they run a few kilometers each day. They go for a 30, 40-minute run, whatever it is. And they never really complain that their energy levels crash just because, they've got more total oxygen in the body. They never tend to be the strongest people anyway, but you never hear them complaining about having low energy levels just simply because from that standpoint, they got a better circulatory system. People that run a lot as well, generally don't have high levels of body fat. So yeah, it's just taking all those factors into consideration.